Mr. Yalman-Chile, Mr. Bolton, you may call your next witness.
State would call Jennifer Corsey.
Could you get Jennifer Corsey, please? You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, if you could raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm your testimony in the matter pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. You can have a seat. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, if you could start by stating your name and spelling it for our court reporter, please.
Sure. My name is Jennifer Corsey. Last name is spelled Coursey.
And Ms. Corsey, how are you employed, ma'am?
I am currently employed with the United States Army Criminal Investigation Laboratory in Forest Park, Georgia.
And can you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities at the U.S. Army's Criminal Investigation Laboratory?
Sure. I serve as the laboratory director for that laboratory, and basically I have complete oversight over all of the forensics that we conduct at that laboratory, and we do forensic analysis for the military agencies across all of the Department of War, so worldwide.
Okay. How long have you been at the U.S. Army's Criminal Investigation Laboratory?
I've been there since June of 2004, so a little over 21 years.
And in those 21 years, can you speak a little bit about the different responsibilities you've had as you've kind of worked your way up to the title of Executive Assistant Director?
Sure. Basically, I began my employment at the U.S. Army Crime Lab in June of 2004. At that time, I was a DNA examiner, forensic biologist, which means I performed DNA analysis and serology on cases that were submitted to the laboratory. I was in that position from 2004 until 2010. In 2010, I was promoted to a supervisor, so I supervised a team from anywhere from 8 to 12 or 13 DNA examiners, which meant that I managed their day-to-day activities, assigned cases, and things of that nature. In 2014, I was promoted to the DNA division chief, which meant I was over the entire DNA division, which I think at that time was around 30 DNA examiners and technicians as well. And then I was in that position for about 10 years. And then in June of 2024, I was promoted to an assistant director. And then just this year, I was promoted to laboratory director.
Thank you, ma'am. Before your career at the U.S. Army's Criminal Investigation Laboratory, did you have an opportunity to work at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's Division of Forensic Science?
I did.
Is that commonly known as the Crime Lab?
Yes, the GBI Crime Lab.
How long were you at the GBI Crime Lab?
I began my employment there in August of 1997 and then left in May of 2004, so it was close to 7 years.
And can you speak a little bit to, in general, what your I mean, I don't want to focus necessarily on your current position, but when you were at the Crime Lab, GBI Crime Lab, what were your typical duties and responsibilities?
So when I was at the GBI Crime Lab, I was a forensic biologist, and that means that I did forensic serology and DNA analysis on cases submitted to the laboratory. I would do the analysis, and then I would write a report of my findings and then testify in court as needed.
Can you speak a little to your educational background?
Sure. I graduated in June of 1996 with a bachelor's degree in biology, and then additional training was received on the job, specific training for DNA testing and serology testing.
Can you describe any training that you've had that allows you to perform those duties that you just described as a forensic biologist?
Sure. You are required to be a forensic biologist and to conduct DNA testing. You're required to have a science degree, which I had a biology degree. Addition to that, you must have specific coursework, which I also had, which was my molecular biology, genetics, and statistics. Addition to that was a rigorous training program that had to be at least 6 months long, where it is basically you do a lot of reading, you do practice samples, you have lectures, you do demonstrations, you also have practical exercises, written exams, and then oral exams as well. And the training is usually concluded with a mock trial to prepare you for court testimony as required.
Okay. Do you belong to any professional organizations?
Yes, I do. I'm currently a member of the Southern Association of Forensic Scientists. I'm a member of the American Society of Crime Lab Directors, and I'm also I'm a part of the Council of Federal Forensic Laboratory Directors.
Have you previously testified as an expert in the areas of DNA analysis, forensic serology, and forensic biology?
Yes, I have. I've testified close to 100 times in state and military courts.
Your Honor, at this time I would move to tender Ms. Corsey as an expert in the fields of forensic biology, serology, and DNA analysis.
No objection? Is that right? All right, thank you. This witness is deemed an expert in the areas of forensic biology, serology, and I'm sorry, you said DNA. I was writing it. And DNA analysis. You may continue.
Ms. Corsey, if you could please speak generally to the steps in testing exhibits for biological material.
Generally, it starts with a visual exam. So we open the item of evidence after we've conducted an inventory where we're making sure that we're taking proper notes and accounting for the evidence appropriately. We open it up, we do a visual examination, we look for any staining that may stand out to us, whether it might be blood, so that would be a reddish-brown stain, sometimes yellowish staining for semen or other body fluids. So we just do a visual exam. Once we do that, if we identify stains, we then circle those, and again, we're taking good notes of that. And then we do what we refer to as presumptive testing. So presumptive testing is basically a test that you conduct on a stain that is just that. If the test is positive, it means that further testing is necessary to confirm the presence of that particular body fluid. If it's negative, though, it's negative. There's no further testing necessary. It's considered negative for that body fluid. And that's generally how you conduct, whether it's on a swab or whether it's on an item of clothing or anything of that nature.
And after a body fluid has been determined, what happens next?
Most often, there's an interest in who that body fluid belongs to, and so the next step would be DNA analysis.
Ms. Corsey, I'm going to ask you to help the jury understand what is DNA.
So DNA is basically the blueprint for your body. It dictates everything from eye color, hair color, your height. You get half the DNA from your mom and half the DNA from your dad, and it changes. It stays the same throughout your life. It never changes, and all cells of your body have the same DNA. So that means we could take one sample of DNA from one type of cell in your body, so maybe like a blood cell, and compare it to a semen cell or some other type of cell in your body. Very, very much of our DNA from person to person is very similar, but there's a very small percentage, maybe less than 1%, that varies greatly across individuals, and that's the part that we hone in. That's the part that we look at for forensic analysis. And no two people have the same DNA except for identical twins.
When you were at the GBI crime lab, what type of DNA testing did the lab perform?
We performed short tandem repeat testing.
Okay. And can you kind of explain in a little bit more detail exactly what short tandem repeat testing is?
Sure. So if you think of the English language has an alphabet of 26 letters, your DNA is made up of an alphabet of only 4. And so short tandem repeats means there's specific known sequences on your DNA that repeats in everybody. And the number of times that it repeats in each of us is very different. And so that's the type of testing that we use to kind of determine, if one individual has donated a sample or not, and the difference between individuals.
What are the general steps for conducting DNA testing?
So DNA testing, first you have to get to the DNA. So basically you take a sampling of, let's just say, for example, I've identified a blood stain on an item. I take a small sample of that blood and I place it into a tube, and we have to get to the DNA. The DNA lives inside of cells, so we have to break open those cells, which is called extraction. So we get the DNA, we kind of rinse away all the other portions of the cell, and then we have that just pure DNA. The next step is to quantify the DNA. So we really need to know how much DNA is there. There's a specific amount required, or a minimum amount required, to perform the remaining steps of DNA analysis. During that step, we find out how much there are. The next step is called amplification, and basically that is just making lots and lots of copies of those areas of interest that I spoke of earlier that kind of vary across individuals. At that step also, there's a sort of a fluorescent label that is applied to the DNA, and that's for the next step of DNA typing. That way an instrument that these DNA fragments pass through can be detected by the instrument and recorded, so that the output is a DNA profile that we can use for comparisons between samples and individuals.
And why is DNA useful for forensic comparisons?
Really, it's useful because, basically, like I said, no two people have the same DNA except for identical twins, and we focus on that area of DNA that varies so greatly across individuals.
And can you talk a little bit about proficiency testing?
Yes, proficiency testing for a DNA examiner is required. We're required to do 2 a year, and that just allows us to maintain our competence. It makes sure that our skills are sharp and that we're conducting the analysis according to policies and procedures, and that we get the correct outcome. So proficiency tests are generated by an external company, and they know the results. It's submitted to the laboratory, and we do not know the results. We just perform the testing on it just like we would a normal case, and then we get our answers, our conclusions, and those are sent back to the agency that we purchased the proficiency test from, and then we get a report back from them to say whether we got the consensus result or not.
Can you speak a little bit to some quality control measures that are used in the U.S. Army's Criminal Investigation Lab and from your time back at the GBI Crime Lab?
Sure. They're pretty much very simple or similar, because the DNA testing across all laboratories have certain requirements. And so we start with validated procedures that are validated, they're shown to be reliable and reproducible. And then we have, approved policies by our laboratory. After that, it's more about we use personal protective equipment, right? We use gloves, masks, things of that nature, laboratory coats. We clean our areas. We don't want contamination. We make sure that our areas are very clean in between samples. We work samples at a different time or space, again, just to prevent for any cross-contamination. In addition to that, all reagents that we use, all the chemicals that we use for our testing are tested prior to being utilized on evidence. So we know that they're working properly before we use them on evidence. There are positive and negative controls. A positive control is a sample that goes through the entire process with the evidence sample. We know the outcome of it. We know what the DNA profile is for that positive control. So it tests at the end of the testing when we're looking at the DNA profiles. We should know what that profile is and that the system, everything worked properly. There's negative controls as well. We don't want a DNA profile in a negative control. It is a blank, essentially, and it shows that nothing was introduced into the process that shouldn't have been. We also have reagent blank controls that are also for the same thing. It shows that there's no contamination to the reagents that we're using for our testing as well. Additionally, at the end of our testing, when we have compiled all of our results and we've generated a report, we have another qualified examiner review that case technically to make sure, again, all policies are followed, procedures are followed, all the proper documentation is present. They also do an independent analysis of the data. So there is data generated, and they do an independent analysis on it, and then they compare what they got as the answer to what I got as the answer and make sure they match. And once all of that is done, they kind of check off the case. That is called a technical review. Then there's one more review that is conducted before the case or before the report is released to the customer, and that's an administrative review. And that's basically typos, formatting, things of that nature, make sure there's no misspellings. And then after that, the case is released.
Ms. Corsey, I want to call your attention back to January of 2001. I think we've established that at that time you were at the GBI crime lab. One thing I don't think I've established is, was your name different at that time?
Yes, my name at that time was Jennifer Fincher. That was a first marriage name.
And I only ask that because there's some reports with
Understand.
that and that last name on it. Back in 2001, did you have the opportunity to conduct both serology and DNA typing tests on some evidence in connection with a case involving a victim by the name of Tara Baker?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I want to first start with
Thank you.
You may.
first start. I'm going to hand you. Well, I'm marking this date, so that's opposite. All right.
That's what I have. Ms. Satterfield, is that what you have? Thank you.
It's all right. All right, Ms. Courtney, now I'm going to hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 101. What is that, ma'am?
This is a final report issued based on my testing of the sexual assault evidence collection kit of Tara Baker. I recognize it for the unique DOFS case number at the top, as well as my signature at the bottom.
And basically, Ms. Corsey, if you could kind of summarize what this report summarizes, what this report reflects as it relates to your work in the early days of this case.
Yeah, this report basically states that I conducted
Yes, sir. All right. Any response to the objection, Piercy?
I'll rephrase your.
All right. I'll sustain it and allow you to phrase if you choose to.
Ms. Corsey, is State's Exhibit 101 a fair and accurate summary of your semen identification based on the case that we're here about today?
Yes, it captures my findings and conclusions.
I would move to tender State's 101.
Any objection, Mr. Cruz? All right. Any response to the objection? All right. I'm going to admit it over objection.
Again, Ms. Corsey, if you could kind of summarize what this report indicates that the work that you performed.
Sure. I conducted testing for seminal fluid and semen on items from a sexual assault kit identified as coming from Tara Baker. That testing included visualization of or looking for the presence of sperm on a scope slide, or a smear, they call it, made from of the vaginal area of Miss Baker. I also tested swabs from the oral and rectal areas. The testing of all of that were negative for seminal fluid or semen.
And let's talk a little bit about what testing was available, chemical testing was available for the detection of seminal fluid back in 2001. Back then, ma'am, what test was the lab using for to detect for the presence of seminal fluid?
Sure. So it's kind of it's a little bit different depending on what item I'm testing. So basically, for smears, we're looking microscopically for the presence of a sperm cell. So in order to do that, you stain the slide. And you do that by using two different colors, red and green. It's called red and green dye. That's what we used. The red stains a sperm head the color pink or red, and then the green would stain it like a dark green color. So that allowed us to visualize the sperm microscopically. So that was done with the vaginal smears. I did not identify any sperm on that slide. Then I would conduct testing on swabs. I did oral swabs and rectal swabs. So basically that I took a small sample from a small cutting from each swab, and then I tested it. If you remember earlier, we talked about presumptive testing. I did an AP exam, which is acid phosphatase, which is a chemical that is found in high concentrations in seminal fluid. So I conducted testing using that reagent on those swabs, and they were all negative. So that concluded my testing for those items.
And if you know, Ms. Corsey, is the acid phosphatase test still the, I guess, preferred test or presumptive test for seminal fluid used today here in 2020?
Yes, that reagent is still currently used today for this same type of testing.
Are you also familiar with something called the quantifiler trio test?
I am.
And can you just briefly describe what that is?
So the quantifiler trio is a kit that is commercially available, and it does, I'll go back again when I was talking about the steps of DNA analysis, the quant step of DNA. So how much DNA is there? So back when I did this testing in 2001, we didn't have that technology available, but now it is available, and basically it allows you to quantify the amount of DNA, but it also gives you some indication of if there's male DNA present. And this could be in the absence of a body fluid. So if there's an item of evidence that doesn't have seminal fluid on it or any body fluid, you can still take that forward to this type of testing, and it will quantify the DNA for you, but also give you an indication of if there's male DNA present in that sample.
And do you know when the quantifiler trio came to be used? Let's talk specifically about the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Lab, since that's where you've been for the last 21 years.
Right. We went online with quantifiler trio in 2016.
Ms. Corsey, were you also asked to conduct serology testing on fingernails from the sexual assault kit of Ms. Baker?
Yes, I was.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
You may.
Yes, I recognize these as official reports I generated at the time of testing of the fingernails from the sexual assault evidence collection kit of Tara Baker. I identify it based on the unique DOFS case number at the top, as well as my signature at the bottom. One report contains the serology testing or the blood testing, and the other report is in regards to the DNA testing on the fingernails.
I'd move to tender states 102 and 103.
Any objection, Mr. Cruz? All right, thank you. Any response to the objection? Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection and admit 102 and 103 over objection.
Ms. Corsey, let's start with 102. I believe that is the blood examination. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What does this report summarize, ma'am?
This report entails the testing that I conducted on the fingernails for the presence of blood. Again, I performed chemical testing on the fingernails. It's presumptive testing, and it did indicate the presence of blood. Oftentimes, when there is an abundance of abundance of blood or reddish brown staining on an item, we would go further to confirm the presence of blood. But in this situation on the fingernails, it was a small amount of blood. And so my report says in there that in order to preserve that sample for DNA testing, no further analysis was done at that time. And then the samples were submitted for DNA analysis.
That's 102.
Yes.
Move to states 103. What does that report summarize, ma'am?
This report summarizes the DNA testing conducted on the blood that was indicated on the fingernails. That DNA was found to be match Tara Baker or her identical twin.
Can I approach again, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. Corsey, were you also, as part of your responsibilities associated with this case, asked to, I guess, check, for lack of a better term, certain physical evidence outside of the sexual assault kit for the presence of blood?
Yes, I was.
And states 104, do you recognize that, ma'am?
Yes, this was a report I generated at the time of testing regarding multiple items of evidence to include stove knobs, 3 different knives. Yes. And it also has the unique DOFS case number at the top and my signature at the bottom.
And do you, I guess, if you recall, what were the results of those particular tests?
So my results were, there was one knife that I indicated the presence of blood on. That was item 15. The additional 2 knives, items 29 and 30, did not reveal the presence of blood, nor did the stove knobs, item 14, I apologize, 14. All of those were negative for blood.
And is states 104 a fair and accurate summary of the report that you generated in connection with that testing? Excuse me.
Yes, sir, it is.
Move to tender state 104.
Any objection? It is, I'm going to admit it over objection.
You mentioned just a minute ago that the one item that you tested that was positive for the presence of blood was item 15, which was a knife. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Can I approach the witness?
You may.
Yes, this is the item 15 that I referred to earlier containing the knife. I recognize it with the DOFS unique case number associated with this case.
I'm gonna just go over a couple of things on this box, man. I'm gonna do it on the Elmo. So, you mentioned some unique identifying information. I'm going to zoom in here. What are we looking at here, Ms. Corsey?
In our laboratory, we have a laboratory information management system that kind of keeps track of all the evidence and information and data that is associated with a case. When items come into the laboratory, they're given a unique case number and item number. A barcode label is generated at that time and affixed to the item for tracking throughout the laboratory, and that's the label here that you see that has the unique case number 2001-1002454. In addition to the SUBM number 15, which I've been referring to as item 15.
Then I also want to point out one other thing on this box. Did you recognize anything here to include your initials at the time?
Yes, I do. I do recognize my initials at the time, as well as other initials and dates on the evidence. We are required once we, if we breach a package, we have to reseal it and date and initial our seal at the time. And so that's what my initials signify here, that I had opened that package at one time.
So to follow up, having chemical examination having indicated the presence of blood on the knife, would that have, I guess, moved it forward for potential DNA testing?
Yes. Actually, for that knife, I may have misspoke if I said indicates the presence of blood. That terminology means I did not do the confirmatory testing, when in this case I actually did on this item. So it did confirm the presence of blood. But yes, a portion of that sample did go forward for DNA testing as well.
This is states 105. So, what is states 105?
This is my final official report generated at the time of my testing regarding the DNA analysis conducted on the blood found on the knife, item 15.
Okay. And is that a fair and accurate summary of the DNA analysis or DNA typing that you did in connection with the knife, item 15, which is also states 94? Yes, 94.
Yes, it is.
Move to tender states 105.
Any objection, Mr. Cruz?
Yes, ma'am. You're saying.
I'm going to admit it over objection.
Ms. Corsey, what did your results reveal as to, if anything, as to item 15?
Yeah, my DNA analysis conducted revealed that the DNA from the blood obtained from the knife matched Ms. Tara Baker or her identical twin.
Did it indicate whether or not there were any other DNA profiles present on the knife?
Yes, there was only one DNA profile present. There was no indication of an additional contributor to that sample.
Last last one, I believe. I can approach one last time.
Yes, sir.
Of course, this is case 106. Now, in this case where you also asked to examine toenails taken from Ms. Baker's body during her autopsy,
Yes, I was.
and does States 106 summarize your testing as it relates to that particular piece of evidence?
Yes, it does.
And is that a fair and accurate copy of the report that you generated in connection with the blood examination related to Ms. Baker's toenails?
Yes, it is.
Move to tender States 106.
Any objection? I'm going to admit it over objection.
Ms. Corsey, was there any blood on Ms. Baker's toenails?
No, I did not reveal any blood on the toenails.
We talked, the very first report that we talked about was the semen identification report. And you mentioned again that there, I can't find it, that it was negative for the presence of seminal fluid and that it did not reveal spermatozoa or partially intact spermatozoa. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And at the time, what would have been the protocol for that kit or those swabs to proceed with any sort of DNA testing?
They would not have. Once we test for semen, if that was not identified, we would not do further testing on it.
Here, 25 years later, based on your training and experience, has testing improved in sensitivity in that time period?
Yes, over time, there's been a lot of advances in technology, which allows for additional testing conducted, to identify, not necessarily body fluids per se, but also body fluids, but DNA in a more sensitive manner as well.
If I can have just a moment, Your Honor. All right, Ms. Corsey, as it relates to, I'm going to jump around a little bit, the DNA typing of Ms. Baker's fingernails. I think you previously indicated that the DNA from those fingernails matched Ms. Baker or her identical twin. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And was there any other DNA profile obtained from those fingernails?
No, sir, I did not identify any other contributors to that DNA profile. It was a single source.
Ms. Corsey, I don't have any further questions for you. Mr. Cruz may have some.
Cross-examination.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Well, good afternoon, Ms. Corsey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Give me 1 second. I have a couple of questions for you. Is that okay? All right, thank you. And is it Dr. Corsey?
No.
Which is Miss Corsey? Okay, excellent. My name is Amai Cruz. I have the privilege and honor of representing Mr. Edrick Faust. Is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Okay. I'd like to talk to you about State's Exhibit 101, State's Exhibit 102, State's Exhibit 103, and State's Exhibit 106. And I am going to hand these to you. Okay.
Thank you.
And I want to discuss specifically with you item 2,
Okay.
which is the Tara Baker sexual assault kit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is the proper way to address it is item 2? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Anytime you received item 2, was there a particular method that you had to undertake as far as notating when you had it or notating when you gave it to someone else?
Well, anytime I conduct analysis on it, I would have notes of anything I've done in my case notes, and then if I breached the box or the container that the item was in, again, I would seal it, or I'd have to break a seal and then reseal it when I was done with my initials and date on it. Additionally, the barcodes that I identified earlier on the screen, we scan those barcodes when we transfer evidence from either to ourselves or a storage area or to another person.
Sure. So would it be fair to call that scanning is for chain of custody purposes?
Yes.
Okay. And is this something, this isn't something you're typing in, this is something that's computer generated?
I believe the scanning, this was a little while ago, but I do recall that there being a scanning. There could have been a mechanism if a scanner was broken or not working, that we may have had to do a manual transfer by signing, actual paper documentation, but I don't recall specifically. But that would probably be a backup plan if the scanner didn't work or failed in some way.
Yes, ma'am. 1 second. Can you, or do you recall all the items that are inside of item 2?
I have that information in my notes here.
Excellent. And can you read the items that are items 2J and item 2I, please?
So I do not have those items listed in that manner in my notes. So I don't know what correlates to I and J or anything like that.
Sure. Would the chain of custody report refresh your recollection?
It may. Okay. Okay.
And I want to let you know, take your time. I don't want to rush you.
I don't recall the question if you had one regarding this.
Sure. Well, does that refresh your recollection in regards to item 2I and 2J?
Yes, I have these are referencing oral swabbings. I have them as being part of the sexual assault kit as well. I just don't have them indicated as I and J in my notes.
Sure. And you could use the document that I gave you or your notes if you would like. Can you tell the jury the dates that you first received item 2I and item 2J?
So my notes indicate that I performed analysis on those items on January 22nd, 2001. As far as the notes that I have with me today, I do not have exactly when I received it first. This document states that it was on your laptop, identifies it as being resubmitted on February 15th, 2024.
How about the first time you obtained it? And I'll let you know this. I'm not trying to put you in the hot seat. You're not in the hot seat. Which date from either record did you first receive it?
Oh, my apologies. I didn't see this down here.
No, you're fine. And you can scroll to 2I and 2J if you need to.
All right. So for item 2I, it appears that my first possession was January, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
January 22nd, 2001.
Okay. In 2I, is it fair to state that 2I is a oral swabbing?
That is what it was labeled inside of the kit on the container.
Okay. And is 2I A or B?
2I. So I do not have it in my notes as that. I have oral swabs A and B, but because I don't have the I and in the J, I'm not sure which correlates to which on this chain of custody.
That's fair. You answered my next question, but you have it as oral swabs A and B.
Yes.
Okay. So, to your knowledge, you tested oral swabbings. Is that right?
Yes, I had two separate containers. I don't recall if it was a box or not, two containers that were labeled oral swabs.
Okay. And would you happen to recognize these
I should recognize them with my initials and case numbers on them.
on this here?
I should be able to see my case number and initials on there. Yes, I recognize these as the envelopes that I tested with my date and initials, marking the date that I tested them, opened them for testing.
Okay. Your initials are on those packages?
Yes.
So, as of January 22nd, 2001, you had oral swabbings. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. After January 22nd, 2001, did you see those swabbings again?
No, I don't believe I did. I mean, it is possible that they were, one moment, please.
Take your time.
I have a lot of notes. So I imagine I saw them again, but did not conduct further testing on them. because when I did further testing on the toenails that were in this kit, they would have been in there, but I did not make record of that because I went in just for the toenails.
And what date was that?
I conducted the testing on the toenails on March 5th, 2001.
Okay, so you still would, because it was in one whole package, you would have had those swabs?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. This is a really important question, and this is my last question for you, and I'd like you to, let the jury know. Can you tell us what presumptive testing is?
Presumptive testing?
Yes, ma'am. Can you let the jury know what a presumptive test is?
Presumptive testing, I believe as I mentioned earlier, is a test that presumptively that's the wrong term. It's a first test that we use to kind of determine if any additional testing is needed. So if a presumptive test is positive, further testing is needed to confirm that particular body fluid. If it is negative, then at least at that time, we stopped analysis.
My follow-up question to that, so if after a presumptive test, or let's say this, what does it mean when a presumptive test comes back positive? Can you let the jury know what that would mean?
Yeah, when a presumptive test is positive, it means that it indicates the presence of that particular body fluid, but it does not confirm it. So again, additional testing would be needed to say for certain that that body fluid is indeed blood or semen or whatever you're testing for.
Okay, and if you don't confirm the presumptive test, what does that tell us?
It basically means there's an indication of that body fluid, and generally that sample would go forward for DNA testing to determine who the sample came from.
Would it be fair to say that, I believe you said, let me not get it wrong. What's the type of testing needed after presumptive testing? Is it just confirmatory testing?
Yeah, we refer to it as confirmatory testing.
Okay. If confirmatory testing is not done, is it fair to say that we don't know whether or not that substance is present, whatever it may be?
I wouldn't go that far necessarily, because when you conduct DNA testing, especially at that time, and considering the technology that was available, we retrieved a DNA profile from something. And what was tested for was blood. So to me, at that time, with the technology available, I would be very comfortable to say that the DNA profile came from blood.
And please forgive me. Please forgive me. So I'm not speaking of DNA testing.
Sure.
I'm not speaking of DNA testing at all. And please forgive me for not making that clear. I'm just speaking on, I would like for you to explain to the jury, and not in regards to DNA testing, just the principles of presumptive testing versus confirmatory testing, and what it means if you have a presumptive positive versus a confirmatory positive, or if you don't confirm at all. That's what I'm trying to get at. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So when you perform only a presumptive test, and that is the standalone test, and no further testing is done, you cannot say that 100% this is that body fluid. If you do add the confirmatory test and do both in conjunction, and they're both positive, then you can confirm the presence of that body fluid. Additionally, though, in combination with DNA testing and a presumptive test for body fluid, that can also be confirmatory, as well as the DNA has to come from something.
So outside of DNA testing, if we have a test that's deemed a presumptive test, we would need to do confirmatory testing to ensure that it's properly identified.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you so much for your service to this great country. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Any redirect, Mr. Bolden?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Follow up a little bit on some of the last questions. Did I hear correctly that presumptive testing, along with other environmental factors surrounding the test itself, may be helpful? Is that what I heard you say? Or something to that effect? I'm not trying to put words. Let me back this up. Is presumptive testing, in your opinion, helpful?
I do believe presumptive testing is helpful because there's a lot of, when you open an item of evidence, let's just say that you're looking for blood to see if blood is present. There can be all kind of staining on an item. If, for example, let's just say have a pair of khaki pants. You open up the pants, and again, you talk about visual analysis. So that's the first thing I would do when I open it up. And any stains would catch my eye. If you see stains that are reddish brown, those catch your eye, so you circle them and you do this presumptive testing. Well, many things can look like blood. Sometimes chocolate looks like blood. Sometimes, Georgia red clay looks like blood. There are many things that can look like blood. But doing that presumptive testing can initially go, okay, we can put that one aside because it's negative. I don't need to do anything further with that. Let me focus on any other stains that I see. And those stains that are presumptive, then you have to make a decision based on the case and the situation if you're going to go further to confirm it, or if it goes to DNA analysis or it stops.
Any recross, Mr. Cruz?
Have you heard of Lugol's iodine test?
I have heard of it. I have never used it.
Okay. Do you know what it is?
I am not confident to speak to that at this moment. I have never used that test, but I know I have read about it.
Let me ask you this. Do you know if it was in existence in 2001?
I do not know if it was in. I do not know, because as part of my reading and training, we read about historical things, and I apologize. I've never been trained on that, nor have I ever used that technique, but I have heard of it. I just don't recall.
Absolutely. That is fair. The computer that I gave you,
Yes.
do you recognize that document? The chain of custody report?
I do recognize it as a chain of custody that was generated at the GBI, but I have not seen this in probably 20-something years. It's not a part of my notes today that I have.
Sure. Can you take a moment and just refresh yourself with that document? And just in regards to just in regards to your portion of that report, chain of custody report, in regards to items 2I and 2J, and the, I think the first page.
Yes.
Okay. You do recognize that in regards to those specific items in the first page?
This first page, that's what you're.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say that that chain of custody report, at least with your notations on it, would have been made at or near the time that you received or relinquished possession of those items?
Yes, that's correct.
Would it be fair to say that the chain of custody report in regards to yourself was made by you and you had personal knowledge of whether or not you had those items or relinquished those items at that time?
Yes, I should have knowledge of whether I have an item in my possession or it's somewhere else.
And is that chain of custody report kept in the course of regular conducted business of the GBI?
Yes.
And was it the regular practice of the GBI when officers received items or relinquished items to make a notation on the chain of custody report?
Yes, it should be noted on the chain of custody. And any time the evidence was received or transferred from a location to a location or a person to a location.
Okay. And is that a fair and accurate report? Does it appear to be altered in any way?
Again, I have not seen it in a really long time, but it appears to be what I recall as a complete chain of custody. There are items on here that I never had possession of,
course.
so I can't speak to that.
But to your items, does that appear to be altered in any way that you had possession or relinquished possession at the times notated on that report?
To the best of my recollection, it appears to be consistent.
Your Honor, I am going to mark this USB as Defense Exhibit 21. It will contain a redacted version of the chain of custody report, only including items 2I and 2J, and Ms. Corsey's possession and relinquishing of items 2I and 2J. Does that make sense, Your Honor?
Would you rephrase that?
Sure. So I'm moving to introduce Defense Exhibit D21.
Got that?
Yes, ma'am. And what it would consist of is a redacted
Yeah.
copy of the, and I can make it easier for you. It'll include Ms. Corsey's portion of possessing items 2I and 2J, which Ms. Corsey has identified as oral swabs A and oral swabs B, as well as the first page identifying items 2I and 2J as oral swabs A and oral swab B.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bolden, any objection to the request for admission?
Your Honor, we don't actually have the document yet. So, like, I'm not exactly sure exactly what Mr. Cruz is intending to tender. So if he needs some time to produce it, because I just don't understand exactly what it is. I think I do, but I haven't seen it. So at this time, I would object. Once that document is produced, I'm happy to take a look.
Sure. May I produce it to the State, Your Honor? Is that fine?
Yes, and I will hold off ruling on that particular request until that process is done. You may continue your cross-examination.
Yes, ma'am. May I ask this? Can it be conditionally admitted based on me? Because the reason I asked that, the witness will be gone. So I just want to make sure that it can be conditionally admitted on the basis of
I don't think conditionally admitted is actually an appropriate way to handle it.
That's fair.
I have certainly heard the testimony. We can have it played back if we need to do that. I'll let you ask any other questions you need to.
Yes, ma'am.
To make sure you've asked everything you need to. I'll let the state do the same thing. And then I'll hear from both sides after the document that you're talking about is produced to the state.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Corsey, you received a subpoena from our office?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. Thank you so much. I don't have any other questions for you. May I approach you?
Yes.
Computer? Okay, excellent.
And any redirect from the state? All right. May this witness be excused.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Cruz, the state is asking for this witness to be excused. Any objection?
No objection.
All right. You are free to go.